All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. And those of you who ventured through the rain this morning, it's coming down pretty good, coming down a little sideways. But we're here. And I think we mostly have a crew online too. So I think we'll start with a prayer. Joanna?
Thank you, Jeremy. Good morning, everyone. Instead of a prayer, this time I'm going to kind of do a meditation, a reflection. This is called a liturgy to mark the start of the Christmas season. I know it's already the third Sunday of Advent, but it's close enough. I thought this was beautiful. As we prepare our house for the coming Christmas season, we would also prepare our hearts for the returning Christ. You came once for your people, O Lord, and you will come for us again. Though there was no room at the inn to receive you upon your first arrival, we would prepare you room here in our hearts and here in our home, Lord Christ. As we decorate and celebrate, we do so to mark the memory of your redemptive movement into our broken world, O God. Our glittering ornaments and Christmas trees, our festive carols, our sumptuous feasts. By these small tokens, we affirm that something amazing has happened in time and space. That God on a particular night oh boy, I'm going to get choked up. That God on a particular night in a particular place so many years ago was born to us, an infant king, our Prince of Peace. Our wreaths and ribbons and colored lights, our giving of gifts, our parties with friends, these have never been ends in themselves. They are but small ways in which we repeat that sounding joy first proclaimed by angels in the skies near Bethlehem. In view of such great tidings of love announced to us and to all people, how can we not be moved to praise and celebration in this Christmas season? As we decorate our tree and as we feast and laugh and sing together, we are rehearsing our coming joy. We are making ready to receive the one who has already with open arms received us. We would prepare your room here in our hearts and here in our home, Lord Christ. Now we celebrate your first coming, Emmanuel, even as we long for your return. O Prince of Peace, our elder brother, return soon. We miss you so. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. It's always good in the busy Christmas season to prepare ourselves. We have, like our kids have advent calendars, so we're trying to teach them, to be mindful. They're most excited about the chocolate and the toys, but we're trying to tell them, that's a reminder to kind of prepare ourselves. So thanks, Joanna. So I'm Jeremy, for those of you guys who don't know, good morning. For those online, we're glad to be gathered here together. Just as a reminder here at Vox of our values, in the spirit of kind of preparing ourselves, that the first values of, you have them on the slides now, way to go, Paul. That the church exists to love and serve the world, not stand in judgment of it. Second, that the church should be the safest place to talk about anything. And third, that the church should captivate the hearts and minds of the next generation. Which for those of you here, they are right above us, so they may captivate our ears, but hopefully not too much. So just as we go into this, just remind ourselves of that and kind of prepare ourselves for that. So we'll go through a couple things up front, and then we will go through the next segment on the centered church. I think the next item for us is the first scripture reading. We'll do 3. Same verse in different translations and different voices, just to hear it in a different way, and hopefully kind of in our spirit to hear it in a different way sometimes too. So who has the first one? Whoever has the first one. I think Carissa. She was driving.
Yes. Carissa's up first.
An impressive feat.
Okay, can you hear me okay, Casey?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Philippians 4:4-9 from the Message. Celebrate God all day, every day. I mean, revel in Him. Make it as clear as you can to all you meet that you're on their side, working with them and not against them. Help them see that the Master is about to arrive. He could show up any minute. Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers. letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life. Summing it all up, friends, I'd say you'll do best by filling your minds and meditating on things true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse. Put into practice what you learned from me, what you heard and saw and realized. Do that, and God, who makes everything work together, will work you into his most excellent harmonies.
No, okay. Thank you. And thanks for stepping up while in transit. So I think last time I did this and I was kind of learning as I went, I think I just steamrolled straight into the announcements, which were not my responsibility. I learned afterwards. So I think Joanna is responsible for that, and I will graciously yield the floor to you.
You did a great job last time, Jeremy. We appreciate
I
that.
did a job.
You know, this is Vox. It's safe to belong. It wouldn't be Vox if we didn't have an occasional foo bar.
I'm
Okay.
learning.
So first of all, we are going to celebrate Christmas with our friends at City Lights. Most of us know that's a low-income housing with folks mostly there who have no one, no family. And so we've kind of adopted them and try to interact with them and just form relationships with them and let them know they're loved without preaching or nagging or anything like that. So it'll either be on the 17th or 18th.
Real quick on that, Joanna,
Yep.
if I can jump in. Sorry, hot off the presses as of this morning. KJ reached out and said they've been having way too many cases of either COVID, RSV, the flu, and she doesn't feel comfortable bringing in another bigger group of people into that environment. So we are still going to sponsor a Christmas dinner. We may need a handful of people to help pass out the meals, but unfortunately, due to the current circumstances, it won't be a more fun gathering like we had originally planned. So we might have to just postpone that part of it until our next gathering. But that will be on the 17th. And yes, we are going to sponsor a meal through Garcia's, and all that is still moving forward as planned.
Thanks for that update, Casey. Yeah, and it's, going into completing almost year 3. Who'd have thunk here we'd be in similar situations where nothing's the same, but I'm glad we're still going to sponsor that. So if you, Casey, how should people let you know if they're able to help serve?
Yeah, you can either email info@voxoc.com, or I think most people have my number, so just reach out and let me know if you're interested. She just texted me again while this was going.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. She did make another request. She was hoping that maybe we could do somewhere around 40 Christmas cards to hand out. I know a lot of people enjoy doing the birthday cards, and Kathy has been great about organizing that. Not sure if that's too short a notice, but if someone is interested and wants to do a few, perhaps we can make that happen for them as well, in lieu of volunteering some of our time there on the 17th. So that was a recent request.
We're happy to do 10 or 20, whatever you need.
Yeah, we're happy to too, Casey. So tell her we'll do it and we'll figure out who can.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Great. Okay, next slide, I believe is the December birthdays. Okay, here we go. Yes, so we have Isla Chambers, who had her birthday on the 4th, Kathy Pitts, December 15th coming up. Jacqueline White, December 18th coming up, and Jackie, I always butcher her last name, Bowder, on the day after Christmas, on Boxing Day. So happy birthday, December peeps. And if you would like to be on the birthday roster, please let us know and we'll give you a shout out in your birthday month. On the 23rd, we are doing soup potluck at Messiah Lutheran, which is where we had it a few years ago, whenever that was. Time has lost all meaning. That was a lot of fun, but so more details and signups and all that will come. Keep an eye on your email and like around the table. Men's and women's monthly hangout is dark for December, but we'll resume in January. And the usual disclaimer, you know, we tend to refer to these in very specific terms, but non-binary folks, and no matter how you identify, everyone is welcome. Our friend Bonnie Lewis, most of us know, is having some medical struggles, and our sweet friend Barbara Burlew has volunteered to collect gift cards. If you are so inclined, get a gift card from Costco or Whole Foods. And it was supposed to be brought to today's gathering, but I bet Barbara would be fine if you dropped it in the mail to her, but like early this week, because you're probably planning on sending it out in the next week or so, Barbara. Okay.
Yeah, if I can, just an update. I have 2 gift cards. So just to let you know, that's where we're at. And I don't know if we necessarily need to make it a Christmas gift, but as everybody's shopping, I guess we just decide what day to make it the end date and send what we have.
Yeah, Barbara, I've got a couple at my house as well that people had dropped off. And so I'll get those to you early this week.
Barbara, do you want us to drop them off at your house or send them to you?
Yeah, whatever works for you guys. Whatever, you can drop them off. I have a locking mailbox as well. You can mail. Let me know you're coming.
Can we get an address?
Sure. I'm gonna pop it in chat.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Barbara.
Well, I'm about to open chat and take a picture of it, so
say,
it's still gonna be on the recording. Yeah, I'll send it.
All right, super. And upcoming Sundays, next week we have Bonnie Lewis again to continue on her series about Jewish festivals and other things Jewish, which is wonderful. That will be an all Zoom meeting because it's our 3rd Sunday. We mentioned the Friday, the 23rd potluck. On Christmas Day, the 25th, there will be no services. Enjoy the time with your family and friends. Then we have one save the date all the way to January 28th. Our dear friend Izzy Ray will be doing a night of worship and prayer with some surprise guests, as I am told. So right now we're looking for a venue that would work for this. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, please pass it along, either info Vox OC or text Casey or Stella or somebody. And we'll get that checked out. But in the meantime, go ahead and save the date on that. And then finally, we already went through that. It takes a village, as we know. You guys have really stepped up for December. So many of the slots are full, which is wonderful. But it's always helpful to those. And God bless you, Barbara.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was open. So.
Okay, it's Vox. It's always helpful to those organizing if you can sign up, you know, a month ahead of time and figure out what you can do, and then you also get your choice of what you want to do. So there you go. Sign-ups are
just
go ahead.
One other, I don't know if you touched on it, I may have missed it, sorry. So yeah, the 2 Fridays from now at Messiah Lutheran, did you hit that one?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies.
You're okay. You're wearing many hats this morning and organizing city lights and everything else that you do, Casey. We appreciate it. And I think that does it for the announcements.
Okay, local only announcement, just refreshments by the front door if you want to stop by to grab anything, and restrooms right down behind you if you need it. Thank you. And Paul, I like the cool some of the fresh graphics on the slides, and I don't know what you spent on stock photos, but there's some quality photographs, so very cool. It says on the agenda, Washington Communion Jeremy. I feel like that's a mistake.
That was you introducing the time.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that no one was expecting me to do the worship and communion. So I think Casey has a video queued up. I certainly hope. I think we all
you
hope.
get to introduce the communion. Like you get to talk about communion if you want, or you can just tell us to go for it.
Oh, that's what I'm supposed to do here. Okay.
Yeah, the values around communion. Jeremy, get the golden, vocals going for us.
Oh, no, they're not.
I can point you guys back to his high school band if you'd like.
Oh, here we go. That
Not
are you
about
guys
our
going to
first
open
date.
up?
He played that album for me.
Anyways.
Three kids later,
It's not here though. At any rate, we'll have a more quality performance for you, and this can also be a time of communion. So if you want to have, a traditional, wine and bread, or muffin and coffee, or whatever works for you, we'll just kind of prepare our hearts, be serious about this, and be ready for worship. Well, that's great. It's nice to hear both of them seen together. I think that was from a couple of years ago. We were in the pandemic, and it's a nice bring back, and makes me excited for our worship night coming up. We have our second scripture reading of the day before we get into today's content, and I believe that's by Jonathan.
Sorry, my bad. I forgot to unmute him.
Rejoice in union with the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see how reasonable and gentle you are. The Lord is near. Don't worry about anything. On the contrary, make your requests known to God by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Then God's shalom, passing all understanding, will keep your hearts and minds safe in union with the Messiah, Yeshua. In conclusion, brothers, and sisters, focus your thoughts on what is true, noble, righteous, pure, lovable, or admirable, on some virtue or on something praiseworthy. Keep doing what you have learned and received from me, what you have heard and seen me doing. Then the God who gives shalom will be with you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will continue our series on the Somerset Church. Casey, I don't know if you have a particular introduction to this, but we've been going through this for the last, there's been 6 months or so, where we've talked about kind of a bounded style of church and kind of what that looks like, and then what he kind of defines as a fuzzy church, and then a centered set church, and then kind of where the intersection and differences of all of those are, kind of in the background of all of that, trying to think about where we fall and where we want to fall and how we kind of create that environment. So yeah,
that's great intro, Jeremy. Yeah, this is essentially the fourth in at least the 5-part video series. So yeah, we'll pick up the last one sometime early next year. But I don't really have much to add other than this is, yeah, Mark will get at least a little bit more detail into what a centered set church might look like. How's the volume, by the way? Is it coming through okay?
Yeah.
All right.
It's not enough to say simply that God is at the center of a church. What do we mean when we say God? For instance, the image that some Christians have of God is a judge with accusing eyes, ready to impose a penalty, or of a stern authority figure demanding obedience, ready to punish if we step out of line. Yet for others, God is the ultimate nice guy or kindly grandmother, only gifts and words of affirmation. Reality is, we can draw centered set diagrams, talk about the well image, and offer explanations of the character of a centered church. But if people in the church view God as an accusing figure of conditional love, they will still experience church as bounded. And in the opposite way, if they have a fuzzy, non-confrontational God of only partial love, it will hinder them from having a centered church experience. So rather than just saying God is our center, we must describe who the God of the center is. Our conceptions about God will influence whether we do church in a bounded, fuzzy, or centered way. How do we know what God is like? Well, through descriptions in the Bible, and especially through looking at Jesus, God incarnate. Of course, we cannot in one short video fully answer the question, how do we describe the God of the center? Yet, the one passage we will look at, Luke 15, is a great place to evaluate if the God of the Bible lines up more with a bounded approach, a fuzzy approach, or a centered approach. At the beginning of Luke 15, we read that tax collectors and sinners are coming near to Jesus because they want to listen to him. We might think, well, of course they want to listen to Jesus. But really, this is quite amazing. Other religious leaders exclude and shame these outcasts, prostitutes, tax collectors, those who don't go to the synagogue or comply with diet and Sabbath laws. The bounded group ways of the Pharisees communicate to these sinners, stay away until you clean up your act. Jesus communicates the opposite. And it's not just that Jesus lets them sit in the back and listen in. He actually invites them to eat with him, a radical act of acceptance. Now, this is quite upsetting to the Pharisees. He is ignoring their clearly drawn lines. What if other religious leaders start doing the same as Jesus? The lines will lose their power. Picture the scene. Outcasts, excluded people are gathered around Jesus listening. And then, a bit off to one side, a group of Pharisees and teachers of the law are standing there with their arms crossed like this, and they're looking accusingly at the people, at Jesus, grumbling, mumbling, complaining. Jesus responds to their bounded group line drawing comments by telling the entire crowd, both the insiders and the outsiders, 3 parables: the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost sons. We will focus on the last one, verses 11 through 32, if you'd like to follow along. Now, Jesus didn't need to explain the meaning or significance of ancient customs to his listeners, but many of these details might be lost on us because we live in a different time and culture. I'm going to expand the story a bit to fill in some of those details. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to retell it from the perspective of a neighbor who lives in the village where this parable was taking place. Well, amazing things have been happening in one family in our village. The younger son asked the father for his inheritance. Can you imagine? Have you ever heard of such a thing? What nerve, what disrespect. He might as well have said, "Oh, father, I wish you'd just die. Get out of the way. Let me have the farm." Of course, we all expected the father to scorn the younger son, perhaps disown him. Instead, he gave his younger son the inheritance. It also amazed us that the older son never intervened, or at least protested that he didn't want to have anything to do with his younger brother's action and the disgrace he'd brought to the family. Well, as news spread around town, a lot of people were pretty upset, and I think the younger son started feeling pretty uncomfortable. So what do you think he did? He tried to sell it. Can you imagine selling ancestral land? What will his father have to live off of when he grows older? And what will this son have to give to his children? Well, trying to sell the land only made things worse for the son. Each person he tried to sell it to got angry and insulted him. He finally found someone to buy it, a merchant newly arrived to town. Well, the son couldn't have felt very welcome here after doing such shameful things, so he took the money and left town. He went off to a Gentile land where he squandered all his money, and then a famine hit. And him being a foreigner with no connections, no family, he felt the impact of this famine before others. So there he was, living in a foreign land, hungry and feeding pigs for a living. We heard he was so hungry that he wanted to eat the pig food. He'd obviously lost all his dignity. Just think, a Jew feeding pigs for a living and eating their food. The son was starving, but he knew that if he returned home, he would face the scorn of the village. After all, we'd shamed him before he left. How much more would we shame him in his degraded condition? And he had blown his complete inheritance in a Gentile land. Now, he must have been worried about his father's anger, but he also certainly knew about the kezah, our custom of banishing anyone who lost or sold family inheritance among the Gentiles. We want to keep our wealth within Israel. But there he is, desperate. So the son hoped that his father would give him a job as a worker so he could pay back the inheritance, escape the ban. But he didn't know if his father would even talk to him. So he decided to apologize first. I mean, he's imagining this. He doesn't know what's going to happen, but imagining, maybe I apologize first, and then maybe his father would listen to his request to get a job. So he's walking home and he's rehearsing. What am I going to say? And he gets this really short speech. He says, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands." He keeps repeating this line. This is what he's going to say to his father. Now, he wished that there was a way, a back way to sneak into town, just go to his house so none of us would see it. But our homes are all clustered together in the village, our farmland spread around outside. He had to come right down the main street of town to get to his house. Well, I was one of the first to see him, and what a sight he was. Dirty, thin, barefoot, wearing patched up clothes that looked like rags. He was walking like this with his head hung low, hoping we wouldn't recognize him. But I recognized him right away. And I turned into the home and called my sons out to see him because I was glad at how bad he looked. I wanted my sons to see this so they wouldn't get, crazy ideas of running off like this. Well, other people heard me yell and they came out of their houses, and soon there's this whole crowd there, both sides of the street, and we started yelling at him, insulting him. "You worthless pig, leave our village, you foreigner." As the crowds gathered and people began preparing to have the kezah ceremony to ban him from the village, there we were, and all of a sudden I felt the crowd turning this way and looking this way. And you know what I saw? His father was running toward us down the street. We were all shocked. In our culture, men do not run in public. How shameful. Just imagine what he exposed, his robes flying up in the air. Then the father hugged and kissed his filthy son. We all shut up. We could not insult or ban the son when his own father, who had the most right to be upset, was welcoming him home. In fact, his father was humiliating himself to stop us from shaming his son. And then the son said, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." And you see that? He didn't say anything about, "Give me a job, make me a hired hand." He stopped, left off half his little speech. I think the father's reaction changed the son's whole perspective. He must have been amazed by his father's love and acceptance and grateful for the way his father had saved him from our scorn. Maybe he realized that he couldn't bring about a reconciliation on his own or try to buy back his relationship with his father. He had done more than waste money. He had hurt his father. So all he could do was ask for mercy. Well, the father left no doubt about whether he was accepting the son back. He responded by telling his servants, put sandals on his feet, put the ring on his finger, a fine robe on him. And without a word of rebuke, the father covered up his son's filth and shame, honoring him as a true son. And then he told the servants, prepare a feast, kill the fatted calf. Notice he didn't say, go grab a lamb or a chicken. This meant the whole village was invited. Well, I was glad to hear that. The father not only accepted the son back, but he honored him and celebrated his return in the presence of the entire village. But that's only half the story. So I went out into the fields to work the rest of the day and came back to get ready for the dinner and then headed down to the house for the big celebration. And I or others are arriving for the celebration. And just as I was getting there, the older son, who had been out in the fields all day, he came back. So I paused to let him enter in so he could take his place as greeter at his father's party. That's our custom. The older son stands as greeter. But he stopped and asked the servant, hey, what's happening here? And the servant said, your father's celebrating and welcoming back your brother. The older son turned away from the house and said, I'm not joining this celebration. I deserve a party, not my brother. And then he made this big, huge scene in front of the guests. What disrespect. Such a shameful thing to do. Then I looked and I saw the father pass through the door, look out and see all this commotion. And the father comes out of the house. Well, I expected the father to be furious, to come out and grab his older son, by the collar, put him in his place. But the father came out. And rather than scolding his son for insulting him, the father, he pleaded with his son to join the celebration. For the second time today, the father sought to restore a dishonoring son. But the older son continued to insult his father. He spoke with no respect, without using a title. He yelled in his father's face, listen, for all these years I've been working like a slave for you. I've never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed a fatted calf for him. Once again, the father went out of his way to try to bring the older son into the family celebration, shaming himself for the sake of his son. He responded, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found. Now, wouldn't you like to know what happened? How did the story end? Did the older son go in? Jesus does not finish the story. Why? To answer that, we need to remember the two groups of people who are listening. It is up to the Pharisees to determine the ending. By not finishing the story, Jesus is saying, I'm offering love and forgiveness to these people. Will you come in and join the welcome home party? Jesus also wants to communicate something else to the Pharisees. Anyone in his culture would see that the older son, although keeping the letter of the law, has done shameful things that damaged his relationship with his father. Through the parable, Jesus tells the scribes and Pharisees, you are sinners too. But like the father in the parable who comes out of the house to invite the older son to take part in the celebration, Jesus does not scorn or reject the Pharisees. He invites them to join him in welcoming the excluded people. Jesus expresses God's gracious welcome to everyone, the sinners as well as the Pharisees. Although we commonly call this the parable of the prodigal son, the central figure is the father. The father willingly suffers shame to communicate love and forgiveness with each son personally and to restore their relationship as a family. The table is open to the prodigal younger son, the bitter older son, judgmental onlookers, everyone, wherever they stood. Let's return to the opening scene. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees publicly criticizing Jesus. If Jesus had been focused on saving his reputation and honor, if that would have been his priority, what would he have done? To save face, he would have turned to the Pharisees, turned his back on the tax collectors and sinners, and said to the Pharisees, oh, hey, sorry, I'm new to town here. I didn't know who these people were. Hey, let's go have lunch. And he would have walked off with the Pharisees. But what did Jesus do? Rather than worrying about his reputation and honor, by standing with the excluded and telling the three parables, Jesus lives out what the father in the parable did. Like the father in the parable, Jesus steps out on behalf of the excluded, absorbs their shame, and restores their identity and dignity. A costly demonstration of unexpected love that he enacts even more profoundly at the cross. What does this chapter reveal to us about the character of God, about Jesus's centered approach? I invite you to explore those questions and others in the discussion guide. For my answers to the questions and observations about other biblical texts, see Chapter 4 in Centered Set.
Okay. Casey, do we have questions for that too? Will it get posted?
They were those, I should have written them down. He talked about them right at the end. Let me
I think I have a book right here. Are they in there? See if there's. Yeah, it's chocolate color.
Yeah, so it's really, I think, just taking that whole idea behind the prodigal son and, how can we use that as an example of how Jesus, or, that father treated both his, sons in those situations, and use that as an example of how a centered set church might look. So,
yeah, sounds good.
Anyone else have any questions based off of that they thought might be good to explore?
I think it was interesting, just as a point of conversation, to imagine what the community's response was. We kind of look at the family, but as we kind of think about a church community, what does a community surrounding that family's events look like, in the context of the church?
Love it. All right, Barbara's gonna put us in some breakout rooms. We'll do 15 to 20 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
See you in a bit. All right, we're back in it. Did anyone have any thoughts we want to bring before the kind of whole community here? No pressure, but if anyone had anything they wanted to share, I'll leave a little space. Okay. Well, I think there was, a lot to think about and still think through. Just heard you say, I have a lot more thoughts about what you just said. So it's nice when something kind of hits you and there's sort of a ripple, in your mind that allows you to think. So good to kind of process as we continue to sort of imagine what this community will continue to look like as we try to be Christ-centered. Okay, I think that's mostly it, unless I missed anything. We have the last scripture reading. Barbara?
Yes. Yeah, this is Philippians 4:4 through 9, the New International Version. So rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, who whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, I think that just about wraps it up. Thank you for joining us. For those of you, joining us virtually, those of us joining here in person, it's always nice to be together. I will turn it over to Jonathan to send us off with the benediction for today.
Thank you. May the beauty of God be reflected in your eyes, the love of God be reflected in your hands, the wisdom of God be reflected in your words, and the knowledge of God flow from your heart, that all might see, and seeing believe.
Thank you. All right, have a happy wet Sunday.
Yeah.
Christmas season. See you guys soon.